Right, so we're going to work through the second part of this paper 2 from November 2017. We've done up to number 9, so we're coming into the C and B grade topics, which are the overlap with the higher tier. So the first question's on indices. If you haven't been taught the laws of indices, then you can kind of figure this out. So if I come down here, what we've got there basically is 6 times p to the 6 means you're multiplying it by itself 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then times 3, p times p times p. Well, 6 times 3 is 18, which means it's going to be one of those. And then what we're doing is multiplying p by itself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. So it's 18p to the power of 9. When you learn about indices in the lower school, you would start like that and then recognize that if you're multiplying where the bases are the same, so it's the same letters, you add the powers. In the same way, when you divide, you're going to subtract the powers. So this is going to be g to the power of 6. So it's either going to be that one, or that one, or that one. Well, we're allowed to use a calculator. So the 3.4 divided by 13.6, we can use a calculator. It's a quarter, so it's going to be that one. And then if we combine those rules here, on top of that we've got m to the power of 9, which we're dividing by m to the power of 9. If you divide anything by itself, you end up with 1. Or the other way to remember that is you've got m to the power of 9 divided by m to the power of 9. And what I said there was when you divide, you subtract the indices. So that's the same as m to the power of 0. And anything to the power of 0 is 1. No, you can't put m. It's 1. It's not 1m. 1m would be if it was m to the 9 divided by m to the 8. Yeah, if it's to the power of 0, anything to the power of 0 is just 1. So 1 mark for each of those. Question 11, trial and improvement, comes up pretty much every season, so it's well worth practicing this. And with your calculator, it's easy marks. So a solution of the equation x cubed plus 2x equals 91 lies between 4 and 5. Use a method of trial and improvement to find this correct to 1 decimal place. You must show all your working. So we're searching for a value of x which will make it as close to 91 as possible with 1 decimal place. So we start halfway between 4 and 5, which is 4.5. We replace the x, and you remember me banging on time and time again, when you replace a letter, make it a bracket. So we evaluate that on the calculator. Type it in exactly as we see it. 4.5 close bracket cubed plus 2 4.5. That's 100.125. I'm trying to get 91, so that value makes my answer too big. So there's no point trying 4.6 or 4.7 because they're going to be too big as well. So I'm going to jump to 4.3. Okay, so open bracket 4.3 cubed plus 2 bracket 4.3, 88.107. That's too small. So there's no point me trying 4.2 or 4.1 because they're going to be too small as well. So my answer is between 4.3 and 4.5. They aren't consecutive yet. There's a 4.4 in between them that I need to try as well. So let's try that. 93.984, so that's too big. So 4.3 is too small, 4.4 is too big. So the value of x lies somewhere between 4.3 and 4.4. So that means one of those is my answer. I just need to decide which one. So in order to decide which one, I have to go halfway between again. So I go to 4.35. So 4.35 cubed plus 2 lots of 4.35. That works out to be 91.012875, which is too big. So if that's too big, that means everything between 4.35 and 4.4 is too big. So it's 4.3. Because everything between 4.3 and 4.35 rounds down to 4.3. So 4.3 to 1 decimal place. If that question had said give your answer to 2 decimal places, we'd have to keep searching until we got it between, say, 4.34 and 3.5, and then go halfway again. They wouldn't start if that was the question. It doesn't come up as often, but they can be horrible and ask it. They'd start you there. They'd say it lies between 4.1 and 4.2. And then you'd be searching beyond that. What's really important is this last bit. Lots of people get 2 marks on this question. Okay, you get your 2 marks for getting down to between 4.3 and 4.4. To get the 4 marks, you've then got to do this bit where you're going halfway again and explaining or showing why. If it's too big, it's the smaller one. If it's too small, it's the bigger one. Okay? So you get 2 marks for between 4.3 and 4.4, and then 2 marks for the last bit. Question 12. A triangular prism. Hey, prism. I'm thinking I've seen prism here. Volume of prism is area of cross-section times length.
What's the cross-section?
So the cross-section is what you're cutting. Okay? So a prism is basically any 3-dimensional shape that you can, if you can slice it, and every time you slice it, the face you're cutting is the same, it's a prism. Okay? So that's a prism so long as I'm slicing it vertically downwards. If I sliced it across, as I'd be cutting it, the face would be getting larger. So it's not a prism in that direction, it's a prism in this direction.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So imagine, yeah, a piece of cake or something. So if it's uniform, and so every time you cut it, the face stays the same, it's a prism. So to work out its area, there's separate bits to this. Let's take it one step at a time. So I got a triangular prism of length 2 meters is shown below. AC is 21 centimeters, so that's the height. BC is 35 centimeters, and BAC is 90 degrees. Calculate the area of triangle ABC. So area of a triangle is half base times height. Okay? I haven't got the base. So, what is this testing? It's in the second half of the paper. I haven't had any trig yet. I haven't had any Pythag yet. I've got a right angle triangle. It's Pythag. Yeah? If it helps you, pull out just the information you need. Okay, so it's Pythag. I know I've got to square them. So I know I've got to square them, then I'm going to decide whether I'm going to add or subtract them. I'm adding. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, because this is they're giving me the largest side. Yeah, is pointing at the hypotenuse. So that's the longest side. So I'm trying to find a shorter side. So it's a subtract. So 12225 take away 441 is 784. But I don't want to be working with squares. I want the length. So I've now got to undo my squares by square rooting. So the square root of 784 is 28 centimeters squared. Oh, hang on. Oh, I haven't finished yet, have I? So that's the length AB. So AB is 28 centimeters. The area will be half times base times height. $294. Give your answer in centimeters squared. Okay, so the area of that is 294. And then the second part of the question, calculate the volume of the prism. So the volume of the prism is the area of the cross section, which is what we've just worked out, times the length. Yeah? Area of the cross section is the triangle bit times the length. The length is 2 meters, but I've got to turn it into centimeters. Yeah? So the volume will be 294 times 2 meters, which is 200 centimeters. So back to my calculator, 294 times 200 equals 58,800 cubic centimeters. Volume is cubic. Okay, so marks for that, lots of marks here. So there's 1 mark for the Pythag squaring and subtracting. So 1 mark for getting it to the square root of 784. 1 mark for 28 centimeters. Method mark for half base times height. And an answer mark for 294. And then part B, method mark for 294 times 200. Method mark for correctly turning that into centimeters, and an answer mark for 58,800. Yeah. Question 13. Find the answer to the following number problem. The LCM of 12, 18 and 24 divided by the HCF of 36 and 34. So this is really irritating now. LCM first of all, lowest common multiple. So we're going 12 times table, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84 and so on. Then there's the 18 times table, which goes 18, 36, 54, 72, hello, 2 72s there, so I won't go any further. 24, 48, 24 times 3, 72. So the lowest common multiple is the smallest number that's in the 12 times table and the 18 times table and the 24 times table. So that's my LCM. Then I've got the highest common factor. So the highest common factor of 36 is, well, 1 and 36 are factors, 2 and 18, 3 goes into 36 12 times, 4 goes into 36 9 times, 5 doesn't, 6 goes into it 6 times, so then it repeats. So those are my common factors of 36. Then I'm going to do the same with 54. So it's 1 and 54, 2 and 27. Does 3 go into 54? Well, if I add it up, I get 9, so yes, it does. So how many times? 18. Does 4 go into 54? Remember, you're allowed to use your calculator, so if you're not sure, use it. No, it doesn't. 5 definitely doesn't go into 54. 6 goes into 54 9 times. Does 7 go into 54? No. Does 8 go into 54? No. So then we're back to 9, so it's repeating. So I know I've got them all. The highest common factor is the biggest number now that's in both lists. So the biggest number that's in both lists is, so for example, 6 is in both lists, 2 is in both lists, but they're not the highest. The highest is 18. So the LCM of 12, 18 and 24,
How do you get 18?
it's the biggest number that's a factor of 36,
That's common.
yeah, and is a factor of 54.
Okay.
So the lowest common multiple of 12, 18 and 24 is 72 divided by 18, which is 4. So, horrible question that, because it's one where you're writing out numbers. So there's 2 marks for 72, so there's 2 marks for finding the lowest common multiple. There's 2 marks for finding the highest common factor, and there's 1 mark for then correctly dividing them. Question 14, rearranging formally. So with this is where, if you can solve equations, it's the same rules. I want to get this so that I've got x on its own. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the bracket. So I get 2x plus 2y equals 7y take away 3. I want to get the x on its own, so I got to get rid of that 2y. To get rid of that 2y, I have to take 2y off. So I've got to take 2y off the other side as well. So I'd end up with 2x on its own on this side, 5y take away 3. And then to get the x on its own, I've got to divide by 2. And when I divide by 2 in algebra, I write it as a fraction. So for that one, there's 1 mark for getting rid of the bracket, multiplying throughout by 2. There's 1 mark for getting it down to 2x on its own, and 1 mark for getting it down to x on its own. 14b. Write down the nth term of the following sequence. Now we're in the grade B questions here, so this is likely to be not as straightforward as finding an nth term rule. It's not, because the differences aren't the same. Okay, so if that was, so that's 3. If that was 3 and that was 3 and that was 3, it would be 3n rule. But because that's 3, that's 5, that's 7, and so on, it's not an n rule. So we look at n squareds. Okay, so as soon as you see that, hang on, they're not the same, it's probably an n squared rule. So what you do then is say, right, well, the first square number is 1, second square number 4, third 3 3s and 9, 16, 25. And you're now looking for a relationship between that number and that number. Yeah? And what are we doing to take 1 to 3? No, we stop timesing. We're adding, yeah? 1 plus 2 is 3. 1 plus 2 is 3.
Oh, plus 2.
Yeah? 4 plus 2 is 6. 9 plus 2 is 11.
Okay.
So the rule, it's an n squared rule because we've got that, and 2 plus 2, yeah. Okay? So you just need to, if that was an nth term rule in the first half of the paper, all those numbers would be the same, and that tells you what n rule it is, and then you've just got to shift it. If it's in the second half of the paper, be a little bit more suspicious and think, oh yeah, okay, we've got a problem there. It's changing every time. It's probably an n squared rule. So list your square numbers and see what you're doing to that. I haven't seen one. Could be on a higher tier paper. Yeah, it wouldn't be on an intermediate. So there's 1 mark there if you spot it's n squared, and 1 mark for plus 2. Okay, so then we're in the second half of the calculate the paper. We're looking for trig. We've done Pythag. This is probably trig. So the diagram shows 2 right angle triangles joined together along a common side. So SQ is in both triangles. SPQ is 90, SPQ is 90, SQR is 90, so that's 90 and that's 90. SQP is 38, PS is 8 centimeters, and QR is 15 centimeters. So all the information that's there is in the diagram anyway. Calculate the side of angle X. So angle X is in this triangle here. Now in order to find an angle using trig, I need to know 2 sides. I don't have 2 sides yet, so I come to this triangle and I see that I can use this triangle to find SQ, which is then takes me into the second triangle. So the first thing we're going to do is work with triangle PQS. So if I put on here what we know, so I'm looking for that side SQ. So we need to name our sides. The right angle points to the hypotenuse, so that's my hypotenuse. I've got to use this angle, so that's the opposite, and PQ is the adjacent. Then I go hurtling back to my formulas. So I have to have H in it because I'm trying to find it. I have to have O in it because I know it, so it's that one. Okay, so let's write that down straight away. Cover up what you're trying to find. H. So H is opposite over sine of the angle. And I know the opposite is 8. I'll do this with you at the start of the exam. Sine 30, make sure it gives you a half. If it does, you're in the right mode. If it doesn't, I'll fix it for you. So 8, write it as a fraction. 8 on top, sine 38 on the bottom. Close the bracket. 12.99.
Oh, you have to put sin in the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the H we're trying to find. It's opposite over sine. If it was the opposite we're trying to find, they're on the same level, so it'd be sine times hypotenuse.
Close brackets times.
Yes, so it'd be sine 38 close brackets times. But because the H is on the bottom, it's opposite over. So that's 12.99. Let's call it 13. Okay, because they're giving my measurements, they're giving their measurements to the nearest whole number, we'll take ours to the nearest whole number. So that then means that in triangle SQR, I now know SQ is 13. And I need to work out what X is. Same again, we need to name our sides. That's pointing to the height. X is pointing to the opposite, and whatever's left is the adjacent. Now, when I'm trying to find an angle, whichever one of the ratios I'm going to choose has to have both of those in. So it has to have the opposite and the adjacent in it. The one with opposite and adjacent is tan. So this time it's TOA. When we're trying to find the angle, that's what we cover up, is the tan bit. So it's opposite over adjacent. So tan of X is 15 over 13. Then to get the X on its own, we've got to do the inverse, the tan minus 1. So on our calculator now, shift tan, fraction button, 15 over 13, oops, close bracket, so 49 degrees. So marks for that, we've got 2 marks for this bit, 8 over sine 38. Yeah, that gives you 2 marks, and then 1 mark for 13. And then 1 mark for tan of X is 15 over 13. 1 mark for the inverse bit, or you'd have had 2 marks if you wrote that straight down, and then 1 mark for the 49 degrees at the end. So with the trig questions on the maths paper, they tend to give you these overlapping triangles. Separate them, draw them again, make them easy. And then the final question, which is, I would be amazed if you have one of these this week because you had one on the paper 1, but we'll work through it anyway. All the members of a farming club visited the Royal Welsh Agricultural Show. They all travelled to the show either by bus or by car. None of them visited the show on more than 1 day. The decision to travel by car or by bus was independent of the day of the visit. A member of the club was selected at random. The probability that this member travelled by bus was 0.87, and the probability that this member visited the show on the first day was 2/3. So they're mixing fractions and decimals. But you know that in each case, the probabilities have to add up to 1 on the branches. So if that's 0.87, you do 1 take 0.87 and you get 0.13. And with fractions, same. So if that's 2/3, that must be 1/3. And then it's repeated on the second branch. What is the probability that a member chosen at random was not one of those who travelled by bus on the first day of the show? So if he was not one of those who travelled by bus, there's 2 ways of doing this. Let's do it the way I expect you to do it. So not bus on the first day means possibility of bus on the other day.
How do you get 1 over 3?
Because 2/3 and 1/3, they have to add up to 1.
Oh, I put it in decimal.
Don't put it as decimals. If they give it you as fraction, keep it as a fraction. Unless if it was a quarter, that's all right. But 1/3 is not 0.3, which is probably what you put it as.
No, I put 0.4 because 2 over 3 equals to 0.6.
2 over 3 is 0.666 recurring. Yeah. So 1/3 isn't easy to turn into a decimal because it's a recurring fraction, a recurring decimal.
How do you get 1/3?
Well, if you just do a whole is 3/3, isn't it?
Yeah.
So 2/3 plus 1/3.
Okay.
But remember, you're allowed to use a calculator, so just do 1 take away
Oh.
2/3. Alright?
Mhm.
So the probability that a member chosen at random was not one of those who travelled by bus on the first day. So that means they could have travelled by bus on the other day, so there could be bus and other day, which is 0.87 times 1/3, or, which means add, they could be car and first day, or they could be car and second day. Okay, so it's bus and other day, and means times. So bus and other day is 0.87 times 1/3. Or means add car and first day, or car and other day. Now with this one, you have to be careful if you want to do it all in one go. So you use your brackets here. So we're going to do 0.87 times fraction 1/3, or add 0.13 times fraction 2/3, close bracket, or open bracket 0.13 times 1/3, which is 0.42. Okay, and that's where I'd expect intermediate tier students to do it. Higher tier kids would have spotted, well, if I just work out the probability of travelling by bus on the first day, just take it away from 1, because that covers all the other eventualities.
Really?
Yeah.
So how would you do that?
Just total probability is 1. So the probability of you travelling, the probability chosen at random was not one of those who travelled by bus on the first day. Just work out what the chances of them being one who travelled by bus on the first day.
So it would be 3/7.
So you do 0.87 times 2/3,
0.87 times 2/3
and then take that away from 1.
equals 52.
0.58 to that.
Yeah, no, because that would be 1 take away 1. Really?
But
Does that work all the time?
you've got to be more careful with it,
Okay.
which is why it's easier at our level just to think logically about each possible. It's not going to come up anyway because you've already had
Yeah, yeah.
that
Whatever it came
question.
comes up on the map. I'll-
next time when you do the higher tier.
I can't.
So there you go. That is that paper.